Hey, welcome everyone. Hey, this is a podcast that explores various aspects of addiction, potentially focusing on personal stories of recovery, scientific perspectives, societal impacts, and related topics. This podcast often features discussions with experts, individuals in recovery, therapists, and advocates to offer insights and support to those affected by addiction or seeking more information about it. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I'm your host, Al Richards, and today, with our guest, Adam Butcher, we're going to be discussing mastery. So, Adam, thank you for taking time out of your morning to be with us. Greatly appreciate it.
You. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, before we started recording, we were talking about mastery, and you've got a ton of experience in martial arts. And I've taken some classes on martial arts, and I tell you what, I realized very quickly that it's something that's up here more than anything. More than anything. It's not, it's cool to learn the moves and do certain things like that. However, you really have to have your mind focused in a different way. And I've taken some boxing classes here and there too, and I realized it's the same thing. When you're learning certain punching combinations and different things like that, where your instructor's yelling them out and you've got to grab them that quick. And if your mind is off somewhere else, it throws you completely off. And what I love about this topic, mastery, is you don't have to be a martial arts expert. You don't have to be a boxer. Golf is the same type of thing. It's a one-on-one with you and your mind. There's a few other sports that are like that. To me, mastery is an everyday thing that people need to work on continuously. At least it's been that for me the past 15 years, and I know it's going to continue to be that way for me the rest of my life. What have you found for you where mastery has really been a benefit by being able to be an expert at martial arts and to be able to have that mind control?
Well, thanks for sharing. And it sounds like you have kind of a felt experience with the byproduct of what we refer to as mastery. And when we talk about mastery, I think first it's important to say, like, what do we mean by that word? And I think it's synonymous with willpower, right? When we talk about mastery, we talk about being in control. Like true control actually comes from our freedom of choice, and so we get to choose almost in every second, like how our life is going to kind of move, and how it really shapes and shifts our perspectives continually, even by what we entertain in our mind. And so mastery is starts with the mind. It starts with how you think. It starts with how you feel. It starts with if you're checking in, if you're listening, if you're like testing the wind and saying, like, it's actually my life's going that way, not that way. And that's upstream and that's downstream. So mastery is about really being a good tracker. It's really about being attuned. It's about listening to your body. It's about being honest with oneself, like truly honest with oneself, and not like overdoing it or underdoing, right? So there's a lot to the element of mastery. But practicing something like a discipline, whether it's yoga, whether it's martial arts, whether it's piano, like you first learn all the rules. You learn how to have a container and you learn kind of the science behind things, but then you become a master, and the master then breaks all the rules because they have freedom once they've learned the structure. You know what I mean? So there's a certain kind of sweet spot between mastery is not just doing whatever you want whenever you want. Mastery is actually withholding oneself and restraining oneself, from uh, instant gratification to delayed gratification, right? Like that's mastery. And so practicing things like martial arts and movement, they take us into like our embodied experience of life. And so you can learn a lot of universal principles. And so what you say, like a golf, like in golf, you can learn principles about martial arts. Oh, here's a kitty.
We have some wildlife coming in.
But yeah, there's things that I, as a martial artist, gymnast, performer, um, have really learned that these are universal principles. And so it doesn't matter what type you practice, just learning to sit with yourself, learning to get honest with yourself, learning to check in, and learning to move and really attune yourself to your experience, and that's a good word. Attune yourself to your experience.
Yeah.
Listen to your body so well that your body, like, you stop having to think, like a good athlete in the middle of a free throw shot or something is embodying, they're in tuning into every part of themselves to create that dynamic moment, that event horizon between consciousness and their body or their physical. And then it all happens like magic, but it's not a mental experience. It's actually a surrendered experience of both, right? In the sweet spot between thinking and surrendering, and being instinctual, which has a lot to do with what's happening in the situation. And so martial arts, where you're fighting and you're in these dynamics of having to really bring your presence to those experiences, or else there's consequences immediately. You know what I mean? You start to hone your capability of being in those types of mm, dynamic situations where you're pressured, you're stressed, your ego is really coming out. You feel defeated, you feel inadequate. Those things start to really come out on the mat or in the yoga room or when you're frustrated at your golf swing. And
Yeah.
so yeah, those are some of the things that I really study.
With what you just shared with us, Adam, it reminds me of those who are in recovery, right? It's that mastery, right? Because
Mhm.
so many of us can fall back into those old habits to where whatever life is throwing at us, and we don't want to feel those feelings anymore, right? You just said having punches, and there's all kinds of consequences that can happen to you if you're not staying focused. It's the same thing with those that are battling with addiction or any kind of addiction, right? We're not just talking drugs and alcohol. It's all addictions is what I'm saying. To where when we learn how to master a lot of this stuff and sitting with oneself, because I have found that, and it's something I still got a long ways to go by all means, to be able to sit with oneself and to be able to feel the emotions, sit with those emotions. For me, I do my best to tap into my spiritual side of things, to really listen and feel, like you even said a little bit ago about feeling what's inside the body, to help me make, or hopefully make, the right choices in directions. And I know individuals who have worked their butt off in recovery, and it's just like a little pebble will trip them on the sidewalk. Something so tiny, and it sends them off that path. And I didn't realize how hard it is for individuals that are battling that until I've actually seen a lot of it within my surroundings. And that just reminded me of it so much. The way you just explained it is, my gosh, just to be able to have that conscious mind on a continuous basis, because those in recovery, it's an everyday process for them, at least from what I understand. It's something that they battle with on a constant. It doesn't matter if you're 1 year in or 6 years in or 20 years in. I've heard people say, I still have to pay attention to what's going on. And I think that is huge, because when I used to go to AA meetings with my ex-wife, I was always so impressed to hear those that got up and spoke, to hear how they really tapped into life and what their surroundings was like and where they're at, their gratification. My gosh, their gratitude is like way up here compared to, as we say, normies that is down here. Right. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being down here. I'm just saying that they've excelled themselves so far past. So I mean, I don't know. Am I just kind of blowing smoke out in the air? But I mean, I think both of them just really gel together.
Well, let me tell you an interesting experience, from kind of that angle of like what happens on the path to self mastery that really becomes more than your body, becomes more than your mind, and actually, like when you study deep yoga, if you study any martial arts and study its origins, it will take you back to like deep studies of the self and the soul. And the greatest of warriors were not just barbarians, they were actually poets and philosophers and scientists. And they were fascinating people that had high consciousness. And same with the yogis, they taught spiritual technology. And so when you get down to mastery, a lot of it comes down to what is beyond you, this experience, this persona, this ego that actually will drive you to be better than just human, right? We can be just mammalian. We can just have a fight for our own survival. But then the human soul, it says we're not just that. Like we are artists, we're artisans, we're technologists, we're poets, we love, we create the stupidest objects and we worship them. We get to because we have fascinating imaginations and we can be colorful and we can recreate our own realities again and again and again. We're not just, dogs. We really aren't, And so when we get into that part of ourselves that we feel is more than just our physical, more than just our mammalian, more than just this one lifetime, like thinking about generations, thinking about others, thinking about families and tribes and the land, like you actually start to take on more when you start to investigate who you really are. And I feel like when you get there, you release what they call the ego more and more into a healthy place, not a totally abandoned space where you're not anybody, but you just know that this isn't who I am. This is my own illusion of self. That's important. It's necessary. It's good to have a healthy one, but it's not what I am. Like I am actually connected. I'm part of this whole. I'm a part of this society. I'm a part of this era. Like my actions do ripple into the next generation, into this everyone around me. And once you start to understand that, you take more responsibility for more than yourself. And I feel like addiction has a lot to do with people who have learned to live for their own experience instead of claiming like, what am I devoted to outside of myself? Who else needs me? Who else needs me to step into my purpose, into my passion? Who needs me to share my art and my messages? Who needs me to be a lover and a goofball and a whatever I am? Who needs me as I am? And once you find that, you start to find the motivation to not harm yourself, to not hinder yourself, to not complexify your life, to be honest enough to say, you know what, I think I would rather choose to be in the balanced state. I would choose to not just live for me. I want to live more fully. And that requires me to have more responsibility and to take on more devotions that feel good, whatever purpose that is.
Yeah. I love how you brought up the word ego quite a few times, because ego does have a way to really, really take us down the wrong direction, and it's crazy how quickly that ego can sneak in without us even seeing it. It's kind of like that blind shot, right? Where someone just comes up out of your peripheral vision and smacks you right in the face. And I've learned a lot about ego in the past 15 years. And I'm talking my own ego,
Mm-hmm.
especially 15 years ago, I thought this person who was Al Richards, was this amazing guy, to come to find out I wasn't even close to what I thought I was. I mean, not even this much. And when you start again tapping into yourself and you start paying attention what your head's saying and you start paying attention to your actions, you start realizing it, at least it was for me, that my ego was running me. I wasn't running myself. My ego was running me. And that's why I was having the issues that I was having, the problems that I was having, the chaos I was creating in my life. It was all, again, this is just for me, it was all pretty much ego based. And now I do my best. And every once in a while, that son of a bitch still creeps right in, right? However, I've got at least enough strength, enough knowledge now to where I can go, oh, all right, yeah, I see you sneaking in the back door. All right, let's boot your ass back out. However, there's also good ego, right? You really gotta pay attention to the two, because I think there is some good ego too, because you have to love yourself, and I used to think being selfish, it was something that was bad, and it's not. And you said it, Adam, about when what can I give? Where can I help somebody? To me, that's selfishness, right? Because it is, you're giving out a part of you in a good way to help another individual or to help a thing or whatever that may be. However, while me doing that in my last 15 years of my journey, I have realized that it's helping me more than I think I'm helping that individual. It's crazy how that works. It comes back to you tenfolds, if not more.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic to discover that you can't be fulfilled or feel whole without others, without a reason, without a purpose, without a passion, without a project that has something to do with giving, with serving, with creating, right? With leaving something new that has never been before, And so when people step into that role and they find that, then it's almost like their genius becomes unlocked. Their energy, they have all this energy to create. They dream about it. It becomes their madness in the most beautiful way. But the way our society is, we're very much taught to be categorized and boxed and keep yourself, separate from a lot of people, and so we've kind of gotten away from even just the practice of tribal practice. Like even as like large cats, if we were large cats, we'd be snuggling under the tree just like they would, right? We're communal animals, and we're not built to survive on our own. We're just not even our neural networks are designed that way. And so yeah, so when we find like what drives us, what really turns us on, what really ignites us, what really gets our mind reeling, things like that have a connection to purpose, then health actually comes, wholeness actually comes.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to agree with that 100%. And again, it's stuff that I'm still learning on, right? I'm still picking up. And however, just what little I have picked up the past 15 years has helped my life in so many different ways. You know, and we don't really necessarily have to get deep into it, because I'd like to save kind of what you and I was talking about before the show, possibly for another show down the road. I think what we're on this topic is a really, really good topic. However, I do want to ask, with all the challenges that you've had in your life, where, how much is just being able to have this mastery and all the stuff that you've learned been able to help you get through a lot of things that have happened in your life, right? Whether it's been through bad choices or whatever may have happened. I mean, you shared with me there's last couple of months have been really, really crazy. And I think there's a shift in the universe, because my last couple of months too has just been like all over the frickin' place. Sometimes I'm scratching my head going, where the hell is all this coming from? And for my version, I do believe there's a big shift in the universe that's happening, because a lot of people that I hang with, they're all feeling the same kind of weird vibe that's going on. However, to get back to the question, where has this helped you to get through your times of struggle?
Well, I can give you the most extreme examples because I think when people think about like mastery, they say, well, what does that mean? Like doing 50 push-ups a day? And I'll give you some extreme examples of when I've really been tested to have like mastery over my attitudes, out of my perspectives that really can transform or transmute an experience. And so in 2015, I was charged and went to prison. And while I was there, it was both the most scary experience I've ever had. And at the same time, like the way I perceived it, I really tested, like, can I see prison as an opportunity? If this is what's happening, can I make the best of it? If these are my people that are around me, can I make them my new family, or will I see them as my enemy? Like just turning these just little perspectives into where when I got there, I had to learn a whole new culture. They said, this is the con code. If you're white, you don't go talk to those people. Those people are those people, or they'll kill you. And I said, wow, really? It doesn't feel like that. So I'm going to go talk to them. And guess what? I didn't get killed. I actually made friends with everyone, and they said, don't talk to the cops. That'll get you killed and stabbed and you'll be called, whatever. And I said, really? Because the cops seem like they're pretty cool and I'm not doing anything that feels shady. And so I'm just going to be friends with cops. You know what I mean? And I did, and nothing happened. And they said, you can't be so nice to people because people are going to see you as a bitch, as a lame, as a punk. They're going to steal your stuff. They're going to just see you as weak. And I said, really? They're going to see my kindness as weakness? They're going to see my softness as something to take advantage of? They're going to take my friendship as something to take advantage of? And I said, I'll just see for myself. And I just made friends. And nobody really did that. And actually people respected me and people responded. And the toughest and the meanest, like shot callers, would experience my kind of connection and they would break down and cry. And they would share things with me that they didn't dare to share with their brothers and the people who they thought were protecting them. They were in fear and they were terrified. And they shared things with me that, probably no one dared to because they could trust my authenticity. And so I chose to show up in prison differently. And I said, the prison, these cops are not my captors. They're here to keep me safe. They're here to keep me safe, and I can see them like that. I can see them just like me. I don't have to see them as my enemy. And I felt like that. The more I could see that, the more I was creating a different experience in my experience. And pretty soon, after being there for years, like pretty soon, like prison felt like home. Prison was a community, and I had regular games, and I had a yoga workout group. I had been given permission from the guards to teach martial arts and jujitsu, and they would come out and like learn with us. And we had a fucking thriving community in prison with multiple gangs working together as brotherhood, as friends. And I knew that I had a huge part in like creating that dynamic just because I dared to be weird and do yoga in the yard and be nice to people and just like cross boundaries, good ones, and I really tested the theory of love and respect. And I really challenged all the bullshit rules that were in prison. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to continue to be authentic. I'm just going to continue to be authentic. And I'm going to see how that goes because it doesn't feel good to pretend or be afraid or to just not be me. And so that's just a few different, aspects of like mastery of not letting fear dictate how I behave, or not letting it hinder like really good fellowships and really good connections. And so the more I dared to be authentic and be real and share what I had and participate, the more people responded to that, more than fear, more than the the other things that they felt in prison.
Yeah. I loved how you turned that around, right? Everything that you was being told not to do, you looked at it at a different way. And I think that's huge because it almost reminds me of something that I've said in the past about look at the message in the mirror. I mean, is it really what you're seeing? Or is it really something different? And when you do take that time to look at things and sit in it, again, that mastery, you see some good. And to me, that's exactly what you did. You went into a bad situation that could have turned out totally different, but instead you turned everything around into a positive way. And I believe that's why, again, this is, let me rephrase that. It's a word I'm working on getting rid out of my vocabulary is the belief. My version of it is you turned it around because of being authentic. You didn't let the ego kick in either. You just wanted to share the love. And I know love overpowers almost everything. So good on you for to being able to switch that because that would be so difficult, I would think.
Yeah.
Wow. Holy
Uh,
cow.
yeah, just different mindsets, right?
Yeah.
One of the greatest mindsets, as a martial artist, I've always thought, like, what would it be like to be one of these monks that go to these temples on the mountain and study kung fu, and just really develop that center, And so I went through all this martial arts mastery, and then guess what happens? You know, in my mind, I switch it and I say, oh, I went to my monastery where I practiced every day, and I got to experience what it was like to strip myself of everything and really come back to sitting with myself in isolation, in darkness, in despair, like all the hardest, dynamics of the human experience. I feel like I was able to have an opportunity to go into that sanctuary and that temple or that monastery, um, to really experience, like, these types of practices of saying, like, can I still have compassion? Can I still make the best of my situation? Can I still grow from here? Can I still create a family? Like, and in every instance, I found that yes, I was free. Even in prison, I was still free to create my own reality, to see the beauty in every fleck of, like whatever I could see, and in humanity, like no matter where I went, like there were good and beautiful and amazing and heartfelt people everywhere, everywhere, and so it was a beautiful journey, and it was a beautiful discovery to be like, wow, this is humanity. And yes, we can be dark and we can be ugly and we can be disgusting, but that's not people's nature. It's not really our nature. People
Yeah.
more want to come into harmony. They want to be seen. They want to have healthy outlets. They don't want to be in pain. They don't want to be isolated, and I think that's a message for us out here, when we get out here, is like, I come out of prison and I actually miss the community, because out here it's like no one gets together anymore. No one is connecting. No one's really dropping in and being vulnerable together and sharing and playing games. And, we're all just like retreating to our boxes and then trying to find happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we try to find happiness right here.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah, it's crazy. You know, with what you just shared too, Adam, it reminds me, is it Viktor Frankl? Um, I think it's Viktor Frankl. Gosh, what is the name of his book? I may have to hurry and
Man's
Google
search
it.
for meaning.
What's that?
Man's search for meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning, right? I mean, you look at the situation that individual was in. My gosh, being in a concentration camp, just to see what he saw, right? And he watched men, strong men just shrivel up into nothingness. And his look on it was all how they were perceiving it, right? He looked at things in a totally different way, which that reminded me of that because of how you said you was looking at things differently. And I think if we could look at life in general that way, especially when I like to just use this term, when life's throwing us shitballs, right? When we're dodging one shitball after another, to be able again to sit in it for a little bit and figure out, because one thing, one out of many things, but something that I have learned this past 15 years is all the bullshit, all the trauma, all the mental frickin' games and all the crap my life, my mind has gone through the past 15 years. After going back and connecting the dots backwards, I've realized there's been a blessing that has come out of every single one of those. At least the ones I remember, because I know there's a lot that my mind has just completely shut off. It's just said, nope, we're not going there. We're just going to blank this one completely out. At least the ones I can remember, I know that there's been a blessing behind it. And you talked about earlier about the connection. You've mentioned it at least 3 or 4 times. And it's said in the recovery community, the opposite of addiction is connection. We cannot do it alone. We cannot do it alone. And we need others, right? And for me, it's my higher power. And my higher power has put other people in my life that have connected with me to help me along my journey. And so that book, if you guys haven't read Viktor Frankl's book, man, I highly suggest getting a copy of it and reading it, because it will really, really open your mind and open your eyes in a lot of different ways.
Sorry.
Yeah, we still don't see you. There we go.
That works.
All right, tell the cat to sit still.
Ah, let's see. Man, there's so much to say. I read that book in prison, and it was fascinating to me because just being a teacher and instructor for so long, I started to become fascinated with people's learning, how people function, the different mindsets and psychology. And Viktor Frankl was a psychologist that went to concentration camp. And so he was able to really watch what happened when, this group of humanity really went through their darkest, most tested, most resilient, like heart experience where they either had to give up and die or choose to fight on, and what really happened in that human spirit. And that story I found to be true. I was in prison and I didn't have a lot of support. And I was like isolated. And even in prison, like I was in a really dangerous position with gangs and different things. I experienced violence, I experienced discrimination. Um, and in each of these moments, um, I got to choose whether to give into my own hatred, my own biases, my own frustration with the system, my own feeling and sense of injustice with what was happening to me, and feeling alone, feeling suicidal, like all that stuff was right there the whole time. And the mastery was really to not give into despair, right? Just like Viktor Frankl, like when you give into despair, and you believe there's no happiness, you believe there's no way that you can derive, you know, like some type of purpose of being here, then you might as well die, And I think people, when we lose our purpose and we just feel like an automaton watching television every day, we lose that we have a lot of value. Each of us are tremendously valuable with our characteristics and our hands and our abilities and even just our laughter. It's tremendously valuable. And so not giving into despair is really seeing like how much value you really can offer and how you do offer. And you do it best when you feel acknowledged, when you feel valuable, when you feel important, and so being surrounded by people that appreciate you for what you are is key to that equation.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So very true. Man, so much for all of us to learn, right? I mean, life is just a continue road of learning and understanding. There's so much out there, so much to know and to look at and study and understand, especially when it comes to oneself. I mean, it's crazy. That's why I really love that, the topic mastery, because and you said it right at the beginning of the show, there's so many different ways. And I really didn't even think of it that way, Adam, seriously, until you started saying all the stuff that you said. I just looked at mastery as kind of like one thing, but it's multiple. I mean, there's so many different ways of mastering different things, and it I may say this wrong. I hope with you being a martial arts expert, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Bruce Lee, what made Bruce Lee so good is he took certain moves that he knew probably was the best moves and he practiced them over and over and over. That's what made him so good, instead of trying to master all the moves. The ones he mastered, he knew would get him through a fight or defend himself. And he mastered each one of those, however many it was. When other fighters was out there trying to master all 150 moves, he just took a handful of them and mastered those. And I think when we can master even just some of just some ones that at least benefit, that we feel like benefit our life. Again, gosh, just the way where life takes us is just amazing. At least it's been for me on my journey.
yeah.
And I've not even mastered any of them yet.
Ah,
But it's already changed my life.
huh. Hmm. There's very few things I think even I have practiced that I've even could claim that I've mastered, anything really. Because that's a word that is almost like an ongoing process. It's not a completion. It's not an achievement. Mastery is a practice. It's like being on a balanced, tightrope and being able to walk the whole way because you never really lose focus, right? Like mastery is, something that is a an experience in the moment. But I used to I used to be a world class um, competitor in the weapons division, and I used a katana, which is a samurai sword. And being a gymnast and being a performer, I had beautiful costuming. I had, beautiful sword I had custom created. I had music that I had, um, choreographed it too. And I had performed this performance over 5,000 times. And I remember in some of my last days, like when I grabbed my sword and this music would turn on, like there was a part of me that did not have to think, did not have to know. Like I had known it so well that all I had to do was breathe and allow it to come through. And that's the closest thing I could feel into mastery. It was in my body was in flight with these gymnastics moves and my steel just fluttering like people couldn't believe. I was free. I was free. And it wasn't my ego and it wasn't my mind and it was my body, but it was all connected in this one practice that I had achieved flight and freedom because of that continual like practice of kaizen or improvement, but to feel that freedom was what I would call mastery, to feel it as not an experience where you're forcing anything. It's an experience where you become one, you become the thing. And I would become the sword master and it would just come alive. And all I had to do was ride that experience and breathe life into it. And it would be magnificent.
Wow. I loved how you put that. Very well stated. It just sounds to me basically just live your life, right? Just go with the flow. Is it
Hmm.
kind of pretty much like that same thing? Just go with it. Go with the tide.
Well, get to know yourself so well that you don't have to force anything, that you just can ride the waves, right? And there's a lot, in the message around like learning what mastery is being honest, feeling, listening, moving with it. Surrender is a lot of mastery, right? Surrender.
Yeah.
And that's odd, right? Learn when to give up. That's mastery, right?
Yeah.
It's like an interesting concept.
I don't know. I don't care for the word give up. I like the word surrender though.
Yeah.
And even though it is the same thing, pretty much. I don't know. I just for my mindset, giving up is just not an option. However,
Mm.
surrender to know that you can fight another day.
Yeah.
I would kind of lean more towards that surrender.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead
Well,
instead of forcing it.
but there's things like letting go of a relationship, letting
Oh
go of a
yeah.
job that doesn't work for you, letting go of a habit that, doesn't really improve your health, right? So
Yep.
letting go, sometimes it's good to know, like, I'm shedding the skin, I'm cutting off this old dead branch, this old dead wood, I'm pruning, and creating new space for what's next. So it's
Yeah.
more that.
And I love that you put it that way. Yeah, we're just shedding something, right? I mean, think of it like just like our seasons, right? We've got fall that's coming up. Our leaves are going to start changing color. Then before we know it, it's winter and all the leaves fall. You know, the flowers disappear. But yet in spring, all this new life s- comes together again. And I think it's really good for us as human beings to do that as well. You know, look,
Yeah.
take take inventory. Seriously, take inventory to see what is benefiting your life, what's making a difference in your life in a positive way, and find what is not. And I tell you what, it's hard. It's not easy. It's hard to give stuff up, you know, and being vulnerable, I've recently had to do that. You know, I finally had to cut a cord on a relationship because I felt it starting to pull me back in the direction I didn't want to go. And it wasn't benefiting my life. And it's hard because especially when you care for an individual. However, you have to get to the point where you're going, that's no longer my journey. This is their journey. My journey is going in a different direction right now. And maybe one day our paths may cross again. I don't know. And it's tough. It's really, really tough. You know, I went through probably 2 or 3 weeks of really struggling with things in my mind. You know, am I doing the right thing? And because I've always been the one that was there, always the one that was there, putting my hand out, you know, picking them up. And it just finally got to the point where it's like, my gosh, I'm not even helping myself. How can I help them? Because now I've ignored me. And it goes back to that selfishness in a way. However, it's a good selfishness because you can't love and you can't give all of you when you can't even give yourself all of you. And it finally after about 3 weeks or so, it finally really started subsiding. And it's really helped me get back up on my feet to get moving in the right direction again. So I've had to shed some skin. I've really had to shed some skin just like a snake does. And I'm growing some new skin and looking forward to see where, you know, the next journey goes. So, you know, listeners, don't think it sounds easy coming out of Adam's mouth and my mouth, but it's not easy. It really, some things may be, but there are certain things that it's that challenge. And you just got to keep going through it, right?
Yeah. And just want to just hold space for you, and relate so much to what you're sharing. And even today is my girlfriend's birthday, and she's moving out. And we've been together for 2.5 years and had a really beautiful relationship. But some of the same dynamics of like really getting honest with ourselves and saying like, is this really serving to you? Is this really serving to me? And how compatible is that? How sustainable is that? And I think in relationship it's hard because you can love people so much, but you can also overgive, and you can forget about your end of the equation and say, are my needs being met? And it's just a really important thing to come to terms to. And again, that's mastery too, is even saying my heart feels this, my body wants this, my finances want that, but what's the truth? And the truth is this is not sustainable, this is not helpful, this is enabling, this is like whatever's not working, and just be able to get real with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, again, my version of it again, Adam, too, is, and again, it's been mentioned throughout the show. It's that fear of the unknown, right? It's that fear of, we seem to stay comfortable, even though we are uncomfortable in our own comfortable. Let me see. We're comfortable in our own uncomfortableness, if that makes sense. And we stay somewhere that we really don't need to stay. And it's a tough decision, and it can be scary. And again, I'm just huge on saying that if it scares the living shit out of you, that's probably the direction that you need to go, because that's your body telling you this is the right move. I think the opposition keeps us feared so we can stay miserable, and so we can stay stuck, and that's not what we're here to do. We're here to grow. We're here to change.
Well, there's a difference between feeling fear, feeling afraid, and having that be a driving force. And there's a difference between courage, which is kind of the fear of success or the risk of like really stepping in, right? And I think a lot of us have to decide whether we're driven by our fears and wanting to maintain safety and comfort versus getting out of our comfort zone or being willing to be in our discomfort and be challenged and lean in, right? And really give it like a good shot. I think a lot of it has to do with our fear of failure, and our fear of being rejected, and our fear of, like putting in effort and not having it have the outcome that we hope for. But if you can surrender those things and do it for the pure thrill of the adventure, and for like the zeal of doing what's honest to you, then it turns it on its head in a little different way. And you can always feel honest about your next step when you're really checking in and listening again. And you say, am I being driven by fear, or am I acting in a way, or I'm actually being courageous and I'm actually leaning into my edge? And I think that's a practice, that most martial artists do. They know, practice being uncomfortable. Go to the dojo, get your ass kicked, have your sensei bend you and twist you in every uncomfortable way, and sit there while you're almost going to pass out. Be uncomfortable so that when you face life, it like that ain't shit. Like that don't mean shit that you're somebody called you a name or flipped you off on the freeway. That don't mean shit. You just got punched in the face 42 times. You were uncomfortable and it didn't matter. It wasn't personal, and
Yeah.
so there's like practice, right?
I love how you said it wasn't personal.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That is great. My gosh, Adam, I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. I think this topic was just amazing, and I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and a part of your life, and even your practices, right? Of changing your life and going in different directions, and sharing a little bit of your personal life and being vulnerable on that. It's hard. It really is hard for people to open up and say, hey, this was me then, and this is who I am now. And you know, society has a way of still continue to hang that carrot over someone's head. And I think a little bit of a shift is starting to happen where people are starting to open their eyes a little bit, because all of us got skeletons in our closet, every single person. I mean, yeah, I just can't see how no one could not have skeletons in their closet. And
Mhm.
there are those that still continue to go down their path and fill that closet full of more skeletons. And there are others that go, you know what, that's not who I want to be anymore. And this is the life that I'm going now. And I love listening to people and learning from individuals like yourself who have gone down certain paths that I've not traveled, because I get to hear their knowledge and get to hear their strengths and what got them through whatever it was that they went through, because it helps me build as an individual. And again, I think that's where that you know, the opposite of addiction is connection, because when we're able to connect with other individuals and hear their stories and hear their journeys, some may be similar, but there's a lot too that are not. However, we may cross a path like that, and we can always go back and go, oh, I remember when so and so said they were in this position and this is what helped them. We all get to learn by one another, right? And we all can pick up on things. And even going back to the ego, you know, even at my age, being in my 60s, man, I don't know it all by all means. And I've definitely gotten a lot smarter, a lot wiser. However, I still learn things from my grandkids.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, you can learn from everyone. It doesn't matter their age. It really doesn't matter. And I grew up in a household to where, you know, certain individual, you did not tell them a different direction, because this is the way it is, and this is the way it's happening, and this is the way it's always going to be. And you're younger than me, and who the hell are you to tell me to go this direction? And I lived my life that way for a long time as well, until these past 15 years when my mind started opening up and I started looking at, I got rid of that straw. I stopped looking at life through a straw. I just love using that analogy, because I think the majority of us look at life through a straw. We're only seeing what's in front of us. We're not seeing everything that's around us, and we can learn from it all. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today.
Great questions, great topic, um, and just really grateful to share, and to share a little bit of window into, kind of an odd, perspective, from martial arts perspectives to how to actually implement that into life, and there's things that I call universal principles, like we all can derive these universal principles just by observing life ourselves, by feeling it spinning in ourselves, like you can almost feel water in yourself. You can feel um that soul element when people sing, you know what I mean? Like, and so I think it's a great topic, to bring to people, especially if you're struggling with addiction or with depression or suicidal thoughts. It's, this practice is actually the thing that helps you find your orientation, find your center, find, without anyone and anything, without titles, without money in your bank, like who are you, and what are you not, right? Like really, like dismantling a lot of what you think makes you you and that you're failing at, right? What would happen if you just let all that go and you just accepted yourself completely 100% right now and asked yourself what drives you? What drives you? What excites you? What opportunities do you have? Not the ones you don't have. What do you have? And you start to, like utilize your own capability to be an artisan, be an author, or an author of your own life, right? Like start to like choose it step by step by step by step, and you really can. And every human being has that capability of creating their own reality, even if it's just an imagination. It will still feel good enough to you to start getting your engine turning and turning thoughts into actions into realities. And that's a really powerful thing, for people to hear, no matter where they're at.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I love that you said the imagination, right? We had it when we were kids. What
Yeah,
happened to us as we got older? We stopped using it. We just
right.
stopped using it because why? Because someone said, "Oh, that's a stupid idea," or "You're crazy," or "You got your head up your ass." We forget about that stuff. And I've had some coaching done here in the past, and I think 3 out of the 4 coaches, or however many I've worked with, have always said, "Bring that little boy back out," because you'll be
Yeah.
surprised where that little boy will take you, or little girl. I mean, it really does, and that's a great place to start. I think what you just said, that imagination.
Uh, Well, I would say people didn't stop using their imagination, but what they did do is they started using their imagination to create stress and anxiety and fear,
Mm.
right? People are hyper using their imagination, but they're going like this: "Oh my God, I get to get this done before next Wednesday, and my boss is gonna fire me if I don't step it up." And blah, 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 right? That's where their imagination is actually happening, but it's not for their behalf. It's not in an optimistic fashion. It's not being honest entirely. It's being wounded, and it's choosing to be a victim, and it's blame shifting everyone. That's where the imagination's usually occurring in most people's lives, is in their complaints.
Wow, well
And so,
put. Yeah. It the word woundology came up, and I don't know if you've heard that word, woundology. Carolyn Mize, who is a New York Times bestseller, 5 times bestseller. She's an international speaker, and she has studied a lot on human consciousness. And she coined the word woundology. And as a matter of fact, at our Healing Utah Success Summit on October 5th, I'm going to touch on woundology just a little bit. And the word is based around how we blame, complain, and justify. So thank you for saying that, because yeah, I guess we don't shut off our imagination. It just gets used in a different way.
and it's doing things that are actually trapping us, creating unhealthy patterns, creating anxiety and stress, creating unrealistic expectations, like having worst case scenarios playing in the background, you know what I mean? Like that's what an imagination. But the child's present. The child's not worried about a bank account or a reputation or any of that shit. The child is present and playful and curious and an explorer and is using its imagination to accomplish anything it's excited about, right? And
Yeah.
what would happen if we lived in a world where adults could actually do that? That's not where we live in, right? So
Yeah. I love it. Well, Kyle, or excuse me, not Kyle, Adam, is there any final words you'd like to share with our listeners before we sign off?
let's see. I would say when I went to prison, it felt like it was like a true proving grounds of like the power of fellowship and the power of love, the power of respecting other people, and the power of vulnerability, to be honest. When I went there, I tested these theories like, can you be kind in prison? Can you be authentic in prison? Um, can you blur racial discrimination? Can you do that here in the most dangerous place in the world? And in society, we all are so afraid of each other. We're afraid of these exact same things. Like, can I be vulnerable? Can I be honest with my fellow people? Like, can I honor their boundaries and honor my boundaries? But I found that you really could, and I found that it was a superpower. And I always thought to myself, like, if you could do it here in this condensed version of humanity, and you could find that it had such an effect where community was created and fellowship was created and hostilities were released and cohesion happened and laughter occurred, and in the darkest place, in the place where nobody could believe that that could be possible, like it was happening. And it does happen, and it always has happened in prison. But it's just a testament to the power of each of us to step into that wherever you are, like be that vortex of understanding and acceptance, and be proactive and believe in humanity rather than be afraid of it and give it a chance.
Wow.
I'll end there.
Very well put. Thank you for sharing that. I love it. Thank you so much. Well, guys, thank you again. Adam, thank you so much for your time this morning. And just want to say, hey, thank you to all our past guests. And I'll just say thank you to our future guests because we've got a lot of good ones that are coming up. Thank you to all our past sponsors. And again, thank you to all our listeners. You guys are the ones that are making this possible. And I got to throw it out there, man. Mark your calendar, Saturday, October 5th at the Miller Free Enterprise Building in Sandy. From, I think our time's pretty much set now from about 10 to 3:30, 3:45. The fourth Healing Utah Success Summit, guys. You got to make this one. This one is going to be totally different. If you've been to the other three, this one's going to blow your mind. We've got some great speakers that are going to be speaking on all types of different things. And it's just going to be a great atmosphere full of energy and full of love and kindness. So again, October 5th at the Miller Free Enterprise Building in Sandy. Go to Roosh Recovery, get your tickets. They're only $25. They're very inexpensive. And come out and say hi and join us. We'd love to have you guys. Remember this, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.